This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Johnny Joannou. Really appreciate your being on with us. You know, I was doing some reviewing and seeing that there are only 4 members of the General Assembly who came about the time you first arrived, or a year or so earlier. You served for 8 years in the House, and then out for a little bit, and then 8 years in the Senate, and now back since 1997 in the House. And really appreciate your being on and talking with our viewers about whatever subjects that you'd like to bring up. Certainly a ranking member of the Appropriations Committee and a budget conferee for now quite a few years.
Yes.
So we
very fortunate.
Appreciate your being on.
Thank you for having me.
I think just earlier today, when we're taping this program on Monday, but earlier today, I think I heard you say to the JLARC Commission, you won't find anyone more conservative, fiscally conservative than I am, and that's certainly a part of your good, strong reputation.
Well, I try to take that path, particularly in my financing. I really believe that the money that we receive is that of our constituents, and it's not my money and it's not my thought. I try to intervene my thoughts in how we ought to spend this money and how to save money, and have government as small as possible, really.
And that's been your philosophy long before some groups started appearing that had that philosophy.
That's quite right. I was that way since 1976.
Yes. You know, thinking back, Johnny, too, those first 8 years in the House, and then these recent years, what are some of the reflections you have about what's staying the same, what's changed in that time frame?
Well, I can tell you that when I first came up here, I sat on the back row on the other side. There were 88 Democrats and 12 Republicans, and Clinton Miller was one of the Republicans sitting in front of me. He was from up in the Shenandoah Valley, and he and I became very good friends, and along with Ted Morrison, and I just really enjoyed the debates that took place. And it was just like being in court. You weren't, it wasn't between two people. It was a philosophy. And afterwards, we'd all go out and have a cup of coffee and talk and shoot the breeze. And it was real nice and very gentlemanly like. And there were a lot of ladies, a few ladies, not as many as there are today. But it was really a nice atmosphere. And I mean that not because they were still smoking.
Right. Yeah, right.
And everybody had the little iron ashtray. But it was really nice. And I really didn't say a whole lot the first 4 years that I was here because it was a learning process. And let me just tell you, when I drove up here in 1976 January, and I looked and I said, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? What do I know? Why am I here? And it took me a while to learn, and that's why you have to you try to get involved in your committee work and try to learn as much as you can, because government is really large and you can't know everything. And when you go back home, people are asking you, well, what about this and what about that? And you try to develop a conversation with them and let them know that, you know, I don't know everything. I try to learn what I can, and it's taken me a long time to learn what I know today.
Well, and when you were first here, and the two people you named were, like you, both attorneys, there probably was a majority of the members of the House probably were attorneys at that time.
Yes, there were about 92 members of the House were attorneys.
Oh, is that high a number?
Yes.
Wow. And I haven't done a count recently, and I don't know that you have.
I think we've got, on the House side, I don't think we have more than 6 actively working attorneys.
Oh, that's a major contrast.
Yes, it is.
That really is. You know, when you're talking about the kind of the collegiality where you would, almost like in court, where you'd be opposing attorneys and presenting a case. I don't usually go around quoting Shakespeare, but it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from, I think, The Taming of the Shrew, where it talks about, and do as lawyers do at law, you know, strive mightily, but eat and drink as friends. That there were people who would strive mightily on the issues.
Oh, very much so. And it was amazing because a lot of times Clinton Miller was he and I were very close. And he was a Republican and I'm a Democrat. And Ted Morrison, of course, was a Democrat. And we had different views on various things. But we never discussed them outside of the legislature. If something came up on the floor of the House and I opposed it and Ted Morrison was for it, if I got on my feet, I better know what I'm talking about, because Ted was like a shark.
Right.
He was very, very intelligent, and so was Clint. As a matter of fact, I really think that probably the best 2 delegates we've ever had were, at least that I've served with, were Ted Morrison and Clint Miller.
Of course, when you came in at that time, too, you didn't have a legislative assistant.
No. Well, I did have, but we were over in this Jefferson building, not Jefferson, but we're right across the street from where we are today.
Right.
And in the front room, there was a bathtub, and that was where all my files were. And that's where my aide was, and I was in the back room. We just had, and 1 secretary per floor. It was amazing. It really
that was in the building I think I've heard referred to as the old Hotel Richmond or something.
Yes.
It had been a hotel that was changed over. The state had it, and tried to turn those hotel rooms into offices.
Yeah, it was something. I can tell. Yeah, we came up here, and I really didn't know what to do. It's amazing, and that was the importance that I felt, that you had to sit and learn before you opened your mouth and said something. The process was very important. Everything was important in those days. You just didn't get up and just talk about something as a freshman. I know that I had some ideas, but I'd talk back, not on the floor of the House, but when we got back to a room, or when we were talking in committee or something like that. That's when you got real active to find out and ask the questions that you had to ask. And I still ask those today. If I don't know something, I'm not embarrassed. Just, tell me, because I don't know. And it helps me make a decision.
So that 1 secretary that you had per floor, did your bills have to be typed up, or were they handwritten when you would introduce bills?
Well, Ted Morrison showed me how to type my own bills up if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And I still do that today sometimes. But basically, we did have legislative services. And I always made it a point that if I was going to do something, to do it ahead of time, not wait till the last minute. And that's why I try to get my bills done in June rather than wait until November or December, and discussing it with the staff, because on some of these subjects, I don't know everything, and I want their opinion on what they think, whether the bill's a good bill or a bad bill, why it's bad, and then they tell me why it's bad, and then I discuss it with them, and then I tell them to send me a copy of it, and then I go over it, and then I get back to them and say, well, let me ask you this, how about if we did it this way? or do you have a better way to do it
Mm-hmm.
than I'm coming up with? And that way, because they do it every day.
Right.
And that's what's so important, to make sure that you get all the kinks out of it. I remember when I was on courts years ago, that what we did was, when somebody would come up to courts and they had a bad bill, it was a good thought, but a bad bill, we'd tell them, go on off, get it straight, and come on back.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't sit in front of the committee for an hour and a half
Yeah.
fixing a bill.
Yeah.
And then you had 7 other people waiting to hear their bill. That's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
And so we moved a little bit quicker.
So the number of bills that you would think that you all probably handled back in the late 70s, was it comparable to numbers today? Or?
No, nowhere close to it. Nowhere close.
Yeah.
Ted Morrison carried probably most of the bills on the House side that had the most number of bills that he would put in. And I think at that time he was putting in about 18,
Mm-hmm.
19 bills. And that was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when you have to go to all the different committees and you got
Right.
18 bills, my goodness, you know, you're not in the committees that you're supposed to be in, so you can hear the legislation that someone else has that's putting it in. Because if you're not there, how do you vote on it? And if you miss a vote on one of your votes, it could make the difference on whether that bill passes or doesn't pass.
Mm-hmm. And while I don't remember the precise number, I'm thinking that back at that point in time there were even more House committees than there are now.
Yes.
So you had more places that maybe you needed to be either presenting a bill or sitting on a committee yourself.
I was on Chesapeake and its tributaries, which only had eight or nine members of that, because it was a small committee and
Right.
just dealt. And I remember when those crabbers would come in and oystermen, and they had arms on them. You wouldn't believe. These people were hard workers, and they really did a tremendous job.
Mm-hmm. Well, now the bill's a smaller number introduced, but probably a higher percentage of them passed.
Yes.
Than the percentage now. Now a tremendous number, but a small percentage passed.
That's true, and the reason for that was because the bill was only put in if it was absolutely
Right.
necessary.
Right.
Today what we've done is we've taken the common law and put it into the code, which is not necessary. I don't believe it's necessary, but anyway, that's how it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, so when you were first elected, it was when there were still multi-member districts. Were
Yes,
there
sir.
multi-member down in Portsmouth and your
Yes.
portion?
Cleves Manning and I
Okay.
ran in a multi-member district,
Mm-hmm.
and we were the two. Billy O'Brien ran as part of Portsmouth, Chesapeake, and Virginia Beach.
Mm.
And that was 1 year, and then after the redistricting took place, he then was totally in Chesapeake.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, you know, I think it was 81 or 80, I'm not sure, I think it was 81, that we had 2 redistrictings. First, we had the regular one, which was a multi-member districts, then we went to single-member districts. I remember that.
Now, I think it seems like that was a time when you ran in 81 and 82, and then you ran again in 83 when you were, and looking back, I know I've had some people look at the history of that time and say, this person only served for 1 year. I said, well, that was a term then because the Justice Department saying you've got to have single-member districts.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so that you were there during all that time.
Yeah, I've been on a redistricting committee, I think, 5 times.
Wow. Twice back then.
Twice back then.
And then in 91, 2001, 2011. Yes. Well, now, as an attorney, still keeping your practice busy back then, did it, the workload that you have, of course, you're more in leadership now from just your seniority. I was counting up, you add all those times up, you've served far more than 30 years.
Yes, I have.
You're north of 30. Did it cut into your law practice a great deal back in the 70s? Or?
Yes. I had to make a decision,
Right.
and most people have to make a decision at that point. I'm still a lone practitioner, and that's not good. Not from the money end of it. But you know, we have to make a living, and we have to raise our families and our children. I think education. My father and mother worked 14 hours a day to help me get my education, and I was the first one to graduate from high school, the first one to go to college, the first one to come out of law school. So I'm grateful for a lot of things. You know, my life has been blessed, and so I can't say. I can say that that's why I'm still here. If I can help, I think it's very important to do so.
You know, not to get overly personal, but you and I have talked some, and I think we have some similar backgrounds. We certainly are of the same time period, and while you grew up part of those years in Brooklyn, and I was in the mountains, but...
I was 5.5 years old when I moved to Portsmouth.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but I'm 73 now.
So you were born in Brooklyn, but spent your growing up years in Portsmouth.
Yeah, my father was drafted in Civil Service Corps during the war. He was 40 years old and had flat feet and wasn't drafted. So he served 18 months in the Portland, Maine shipyard, and we moved to Maine. And he had a small restaurant in Brooklyn, and after that, somebody called him and told him, hey, we got a job for a cook down here in Portsmouth. So that's how we started.
So that's what got you, made the move. Well, you know, as you think about what may be different now, I mean, obviously one difference is the number of attorneys, but how are you really experiencing it is different now than you did back in those first 8 years that you served?
There was more of a relationship between all the members of the House. It's more party now than it was back then. Like I told you, Clinton Miller was probably one of my best friends and a good man. And he went on to State Corporation Commission. He's retired now. But in those days, it didn't make any difference whether you were Republican or Democrat. We all went and ate together. We talked. It was just different. It was just like being in court. You go to court, you have an argument, you're representing one person, he's representing another person, you argue, and then after it's over with, the judge rules, and that's the end of it. You know, you go about your way, and we're still friends.
You used to shake hands. I see attorneys shaking hands and moving on.
It doesn't happen today in court, let me just tell you. It's changed in court, too. Everything has changed. And what bothers me more than anything else is how are our children and grandchildren going to live? I'm worried about our economy, very worried about it. I don't know where we're going. I don't think we can continue to borrow and keep borrowing on the federal level because we got to pay that money back. Somebody has to pay it, you know, and it's just a question of time. And I'm not blaming it on either party. Because I think both parties are at fault. And so I really believe that we got to get everything under control and do what is necessary to continue to be a first-class nation.
What you and your colleagues do here in Virginia, you feel better about that because obviously you have a balanced budget.
Well, we have to have a balanced budget. I'd love to see Congress with one. And I think that would help tremendously. And don't put any gimmicks around it. Just make it a flat budget, and you have to balance it, and that's it. And you can't go over it. And that's what has to be done in Congress. It just has to be done if this country is going to come back together financially, because I don't know what's happening in Washington. I really don't. But I'm not happy with either side.
So the time in the Senate and then back in the House, any comparisons or contrasts you'd have between the two chambers? You've served far longer in the House. I see your smiles. The House is much more congenial, I think. The Senate's nice. It really is. But it's much more reserved. I remember when I went over to the Senate, hello, Senator, how are you? You know, it's not, hi, Johnny, how you doing? You know, it's
being a senator is being there by the grace of God, you know, or in the House. You know, we're here to try to do some good. And that's the only reason we're here. We're not here to make money. We're not here to do all these other things. Because in my opinion, you know, when we pass away, the only thing that's going to be in that casket with us is ourselves. You know, there's not any money back there. So the only thing that we leave here is whatever children or grandchildren we might have and whatever reputation we leave. And that's it.
Well, it certainly is not the money, because I think it's probably, if our viewers watch weekly, they have heard other guests or heard me say that the salary in the House, base salary, is $17,600 a year.
Yeah.
And then some extra meetings for
Yes.
people in leadership, but still it doesn't add up to that much.
No, no. It's been difficult for me in the practice of law, because I got clients that say, hey, where are you?
Right.
And that's why I do only one type of practice.
Yeah, well, it's bound to have cut into your law practice, but like you say, that was your choice. Your choice. Why would there be fewer attorneys now than back then? Is it?
Because of the time.
Yeah.
The time that you spend here. I spend probably over a year with the meetings that I have and everything else, probably about 4 to 5 months. And so that really cuts into my practice. And it's really hard for me to, I only do one set of practice. I don't want to say what I do because that'd be advertising,
Sure.
but I only do one type of practice that I know that I can handle without any problem. I'm trying to get another young attorney in, but my goodness, the cost to go to law school, and when a person comes out of law school, the amount of money that is owed, it's unbelievable. And that's another problem why young people don't come into politics.
Yeah, because they leave with that much debt, they've got to get somewhere where they can start paying that off significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, really can. Well, we still have 2 or 3 minutes, so we don't want the time to run out. And for you to say, well, I thought David was going to ask me about this. So what are some other thoughts that you have that I haven't prompted you at all on?
Basically, you know, I'm pretty conservative. I really am. I do have some liberal points also. I'm not across the board one way or the other. I don't like to vote for party. I only like to vote for my people back home and the people in the state. You know, years ago, I went to Western Virginia, and we were out there on a little tour, and somebody opened the water spigot, and it was yellow. And I couldn't believe after all these years we didn't do anything. We finally got it cleaned up. We're cleaning it up now. But I pushed hard on appropriations, even though it's not in my area. You know, our state is probably one of the best in the union, bar none. I love it. I guess I've had a romance with Virginia for years.
Well, I think that, as you said, sometimes it takes seeing it to realize a problem and then being willing to address it. And that, I'm sure your colleagues like Joe Johnson, who was one that was with you from those early years, and
Bud Phillips.
Bud Phillips, really were delighted they had you out there so you could see what it's like out there. Yeah, I can remember almost the decade in which you and your colleagues really were working for water improvement, even some weatherization and other projects to try to help people who had jobs, most of them, but just didn't make enough to have good drinking water.
It's a shame when you have to boil your water to drink coffee.
Oh yeah, it surely is. Well, this you'll be getting ready now for the next session coming up. Do you relish the thought of coming on back and serving another 2 years?
Yeah, well, I don't know how many more I've got left, but
Right.
I'd like to serve a few more terms if I can.
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, after Delegate Putney retires, and then that only...
I'll be the oldest member of the House.
And if you go back to 1976, as far as when first elected, that would have even made you the most senior.
That's
in
correct.
that sense. Well, Delegate Joanna, really appreciate your being on This Week in Richmond, and talking with our viewers, and certainly a great education of what you've told them, and they'll enjoy seeing this in your district and around the Commonwealth. So,
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you.
thank you very much. Thanks to our viewers. We'll be back with you next week.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosts an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.